Hello, welcome back to Andy Audio Vault Dongle Madness. For today, I will be doing a review on this JCally AP90. Let's check it out. Okay, this is how it looked like. JCally AP90 is pretty simple, right? It is actually being sold as with or without cable. So in my case, I have purchased this version without cable. So in turn, right, I will use my own cable here. And the price without cable is approximately at around 65 to 69 US dollar. All right, so what you'll get is that a box and a carrier bag here. Okay, so let's look at the spec itself. Okay, JCally AP90 is the first implementation of AKM AK4493 SEQ from JCally, which is a dual deck configuration supported by CT7601PR controller, right? And it has a capability of PCM up to 32-bit, 768 kHz. It also supports natively DSD up to 512, and it comes in single-ended 3.5 mm and 4.4 mm balance, right? And here we can see we have volume adjustment hardware, which is plus and minus, very simple, right? And this button also works as the toggle switch for if pressed both like this will be high to low gain, vice versa. And also if press on the plus sign here and plug the cable and attach to the hose, it will allow us to change from UAC1 to UAC2, which is a good thing considering how simple the structure is, but it can be quite tricky to operate, right? And of course, we also have this simple light indicator, which JCally claimed that will change according to different sort of resolution. And the power rating for this AP90 is basically 4 VRMS from the balance port, rated at 240 milliwatt per channel. Quite strong, I would say, right? Competitively. And also 2 VRMS from the 3.5 mm single-ended, which is at 125 milliwatt. Quite normal, right? Not bad for a single-ended. And it's supposedly, depending on what cable you use, it will work with both iOS and Android, and also PC and Mac. At least that's what JCally claims. Okay, so let's now I just quickly cover on the difference between this and this. I have tested this extensively, right? The output power coming from this balance port is definitely louder on loudness by at least 2 clicks as compared to single-ended, meaning that in Hebe audio app, right, if I were to use my, let's say, Tanjim 0 IEM, which is rated at 32 ohm, in high gain mode, I would probably like use at around 6 out of 32, right? And when I switch to single-ended, I would need 8 out of 32. So not bad at all. And one more thing about the build itself. I know many people would say that this AP90 looks similar to Moondrop Moon River 2. And I can't deny that it is practically identical. And let me just say this out loud. Basically, anything coming from China these days, right, they are not OEM patented. So which means that, right, in this case, this sort of all aluminum chassis will probably like OEM release in Dongguan factory there, which is known for, you know, the majority of audio equipment coming nowadays from China. And so happened that Moondrop are the first one to use this chassis, and then followed by JCally. And of course, because JCally comes later, it always seems that they are trying to copy Moondrop, but I don't think that's the case. It's just simply that this design is not patented, right? So literally, I can actually use this same chassis and put my own brand here and release something. Hey, you know what? Might work. Okay, let's get connected with this AP90. As usual, I will always use my Android phone here. Okay, And I'm just gonna skip UAPP first because I just want to show USB exclusive mode in Hebe Music, my regular player. All right, so as can be seen here, right, just please play. You see here, this first thing that I like to show is that this volume adjustment, they are not independent. Yeah, see that? It controls on the host directly. And I kind of like, right, having some issue with this as always, because it means that the limitation of volume step is still dependent on the software side. So the first cons for this AP90 to me is that the fact that it is difficult to get fine volume tuning unless I do this, right? Settings, and then use volume mode to software volume, right? So when I do this, then it will allow me to actually do a much refined jump. You see that, the difference, right? The issue that I have is that, right, when using this Hebe app, now I can control this remotely with volume adjustment. But if I do this, put it in my pocket, and then I change song or something like that, I need to adjust the volume. I can't do this because doing this will not change the volume at all, because the limitation of Hebe app is that it will need to be active in order for you to change the volume. So that's something which I don't really like. So instead of Hebe Music app, in order to get the best of AP90 in Beat Perfect mode, then I have no choice but to use UAPP instead. Alright, so I will show you here how I do it. Click OK for UAPP, OK again. So now it's in playing in Beat Perfect mode for UAPP. And if I were to do this now, adjust the volume, you can see that it is controlled by UAPP now. And most importantly, basically this here, right? When I click on volume here, volume steps, I can choose between 100 or 250 depending on how fine I want it to be tuned. And now it is really pleasing to use because it will allow for very fine volume control, and it also runs on Beat Perfect now. Okay, so there you have it, the best way to run AP90. Okay, and even if I switch on the screen like this, because UAPP have better control of the host, I can also still change the volume like that. So for AP90, use UAPP to get the best out of it. Okay, now let's talk about the sound aspect of this AP90 itself. I'll just try to be as concise as possible. This AP90 being AKM tuned surprisingly does not sound like a traditional AKM that I know of. So I'll just put it out up front here. It has amazing power, right? It has amazing technicalities. It is also rich in dynamics handling, transient. The extension itself very wide, right, as expected of a high quality DAC amp. However, like something which is kind of a bit worrying to me is that I have found that, especially when paired with something very resolving like this Tanjim Zero, or like say my KSE 1005, right, I found that the upper frequency from mid-range, upper mid-range to, let's say, the treble itself, right? Especially when playing aggressive music, as you would notice that I listen a lot to rock, metal, or even anything which has a lot of emphasis on upper mid-range and treble, like, cymbals, drums, percussion, and even piercing guitars. I find this to be quite hard edge. So which means that it almost sounds like an ESS Sabre kind of DAC, which is kind of like mind-boggling to me. Because if I were to compare it with, let's say, Lutu Pau S2, they are the exact opposite. Lutu Pau S2 is the smoothest dongle you can ever hope for. And this AP90 is very, very crisp, solid, and hard edge. And from that perspective, I would say that the compatibility or the suitability for this AP90 would be best suited to listen to something like jazz, ballad, or even let's say pop music, still okay, for as long as the energy level is within what is, you know, like most normal people would listen to, right? But if you are into rock, metal, or anything aggressive, noisy kind of thing, don't use this. It will be like very strong, all right? So it depends, right? I'm not saying that it is wrong or it is right. I still believe that this AP90 has a lot of quality to offer, for the fact that the tuning itself is very neutral, and in fact a hint of organic touch to the sound, similar to Kain Ariusik kind of, you know, vibe to the tone and timbre itself. So that is really amazing, considering that this is coming from JCally. Who would have thought that JCally capable of doing something like that? All right, let me just grab something here. In comparison, right, I'll bring you one here, Dongle, which is quite close to my heart, right? Ovidius B1 and AP90. Both have similarity in terms of being tuned using AKM DAC chip. This one, however, we don't know exactly which AKM because Ovidius never revealed. But this is, of course, AK4493 SEQ. The difference between these two is that I still prefer Ovidius B1 for the fact that Ovidius B1 has the best representation of strong yet very smooth dynamics handling. The transient is flowing like very airy, and it is crisp, it is airy, and that's the reason until today I still love this Ovidius B1. It is very resolving, but the only caveat is that it is very noisy as well with floor noises. Where else this is in comparison would be something like I say again, very strong, very hard edge, very forward kind of presentation, right? And technically, I would say that they are pretty much similar technically, right? Just the presentation might be slightly different. So in the long run, I still prefer Ovidius B1 because of the sort of music that I listen to, right? And also, of course, another one which I would like to bring to compare here. Now, where is my Centrance DAC Pouch HD? I will just, yeah. This is the ultimate AKM 4490, a reference for everything that I love, right? Practically, this is the best sound which I always love until today, right? The way it is tuned, it is being organic, powerful yet graceful. So the keyword here is that graceful, meaning that even though it sounds energetic, it sounds very powerful, right? But it is always very accommodating to highly sensitive IEMs or highly resolving partner. Not like this AP90. It tends to get shouty on very sensitive IEMs, like for example this C Audio Bravery that I have here, right? Very sensitive for drivers BA. I cannot listen to high volume on that Bravery AE, for the fact that if I turn it even on the normal listening volume at this AP90, it would sound shouty to me. It sounds like everything feels like, wow, it is strong, right? And same with like, you know, SimGod Roshan EM2R, another hybrid which I love so much, right? It just sounds like kind of like stressful, right? And but with something a lot harder to drive like this Kinera Idun Golden, right? This AP90 was able to run in high gain mode properly. By the way, I was running on Bravery AE and SimGod just now on low gain mode. That is how I managed to tune it down so that it will be a lot more sensible or smoother with those highly sensitive IEMs. Otherwise, I would need to turn down the volume at least 1 click or 2 click even, depending on which song that I'm listening to. All right. So, and finally, how does this AP90 compares to the other sibling of, should I say, what is it? AP10. Yes, AP10. They are practically similar in terms of power, right? But what differs from them is that the timbre and the tone and the dynamics presentation. AP90, again, the one which exhibit the strongest trait in almost every aspect of it. AP10, in return, it is actually very smooth. It's closer to Bluetooth Power S2 sort of presentation, which means that it is very neutral, but it is also very sensible with energy, with, you know, the age, resolution, and everything. And in comparison, perhaps depending on what kind of partner that you are using to listen to, some would even say that AP10 seems to be a bit more resolving than, AP90 would be a bit more resolving than AP10 for the fact that because AP90 has a bolder presentation to the sound, whereas AP10 is a bit more subtle. So the decision between that AP10 or AP90 depends on whether you prefer a more energetic presentation or a smoother sort of presentation, right? So there's a give and take. I don't say that it is right or wrong, okay? And last but not least, power-wise, it is also important to me, okay? This thing running on my Xiaomi Mi 90 here, which is 4000 mAh battery, it was able to score at around 10 hours of runtime, right? It is not exactly terrible, but it is also not spectacular. Because if I were, you remember, this dongle here that I'm showing you, which is iBasso DC03 Pro. I love this, right? This thing runs 17 hours. Where else? AP90 runs on 10 hours on a similar load, driving 32 ohm IEM at, let's say, listening level of volume. And it also gets a bit hot. So depending on what you are driving, especially if you're driving something like this crazy magnetic planar. By the way, AP90 runs properly on this magnetic planar of Fostec at 91 dB. The volume needed was at around, let's say, half of it, which is at 1632, right? And what I'm hearing is that a good, should I say, presentation which feels rich and wholesome, all right? So, but, right, it does get hot after a while, driving something heavy, but it doesn't get too hot especially if you are running on, let's say, 3.5 mm SE, okay? So that's pretty much on the usage aspect of it. I already mentioned about the sound. So in overall, where does this AP90 stands in Dongle Madness ranking? I unfortunately have to consider all the cons, right? Because to me, the experience of using a dongle is not just the sound itself, but also the ability for it to adapt to many partners. So for one, it does not jive, right, to most partners like what DC03 Pro does, or even, let's say, Ovidius B1. These two things, the dongle doesn't care whether the partner is highly sensitive or, let's say, bright or warm or anything like that. But for AP90, I think that it is more suitable for warmer sounding partner, right? If you attach it to something like Etimotic ER4, which I normally use here, right, or ER2XR, natively neutral bright, it can be a bit overwhelming, right? So it is best to partner it to something warmer, something like, perhaps Tangzu Yuan Li, right? Or even, let's say, Blonde BL03. That probably will work very well with Blonde BL03 because BL03 is like very slow and very thick sounding. So this would be perfect. But for me at least, I don't match it with bright sounding partner. So that is a huge con. And another part is that this volume adjustment is just like, even though there is a remote adjustment, it's kind of like almost useless to me because when I use Hibi, I can't do fine adjustment and everything unless I open my screen and purposely do that, which kind of beat the purpose. So that is at least two major cons already for me. So anyway, let's just conclude it. This thing, AP90, for Dongle Madness, it is a 4-star dongle. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned.